Imagine waking up in a body that isn't yours, unable to move, unable to speak, but fully aware of everything going on around you. Sounds like something out of a horror movie, right? But in 1970, that nightmare became a reality for one monkey. This is a story of one of the most shocking and controversial experiments ever conducted, the 1970s monkey head transplant. What if I told you this isn't just a strange story from the past? What if there are more dark secrets buried in the shadows of science and history? Join me on my journey to discover those secrets here on The Dark Files. Born in 1926 in Minnesota, Dr. Robert White's fascination with the brain began early. By the 1950s, he was already being recognized as a prodigy in the field of neurosurgery. His goal? To understand the human brain so well that one day we could potentially replace entire bodies. Big ambitions? Sure, but it was his methods that raised eyebrows. In the 1960s, White's innovative work with brain cooling and transplantation earned him a reputation as a pioneer. He developed techniques that allowed brains to survive longer during surgery by cooling them, buying time for delicate operations. His work wasn't just innovative, it was groundbreaking, bringing forth techniques unheard of at the time. But as he gained more notoriety, his experiments became more controversial. White kept monkey brains alive outside their bodies, proving that the brain could live independently from its host. But this raised a huge question. Just because we can do it, does that mean we should do it? In 1970, White took his experiments to the next level. He was ready to attempt the world's first full head transplant. The question became, was this truly a medical breakthrough, or had science gone too far? The monkey chosen for this experiment was a rhesus macaque, a species that's often used in medical research because their brain structure is similar to ours. The monkey was perfectly healthy before the surgery, living, breathing, full of life. But its fate was sealed. Dr. White and his team were about to remove the monkey's head and transplant it onto another monkey's body. It was an incredibly complex procedure involving the reattachment of blood vessels, nerves, and more. The monkey had no idea what was coming. For days, it was prepped for surgery, unlike any other one. This one would change his life forever. Now think about that for a second. If you were the one in charge, would you have allowed this to happen? The surgery was intense. White's team had to carefully sever both monkeys' heads and then reconnect the blood vessels and spinal cords to keep the new head alive. It was delicate, high risk, and completely experimental. After hours of meticulous work, the impossible happened. The monkey's head was successfully attached to a new body. The heart started beating, blood flowed through the body, and soon the monkey opened its eyes. But here's the horrifying part. While the brain functioned, the body remained completely paralyzed. The monkey could see, hear, and sense everything, but it was trapped inside a body it could not control. For 8 days, the monkey lived in this state, aware but unable to move, before finally dying due to complications. Now really think about this. Imagine waking up in a body that isn't yours and being unable to do anything about it. Could you survive? When news of the experiment hit, people were shocked. Some saw Dr. White as a visionary, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Others saw him as a madman, pushing science way too far. At what point does science go from progress to cruelty? And who gets to decide?
The idea of transplantation began to dominate the whole sort of field. I mean, outside interests, both professional and unprofessional, began to focus almost exclusively on the transplant model. And then when we decided to develop the technique of transplanting the brain inside of the head, well, then of course we were overrun. One of the concepts that came forward in doing this operation, we're now talking about a brain transplant, or more correctly, a total body transplant for tetraplegic patients. And the idea here was you would take the diseased and crippled body of the quadriplegic patient and remove it and replace it with that of a young, healthy, spinal cord injured patient who was brain dead.
But critics didn't buy it. For them, this wasn't about saving lives. It was about playing God with a living creature's body. So where do we draw the line? How far are we willing to go in the name of scientific progression? Dr. White's experiment made us ask one big question. If this was possible in the 1970s, what other boundaries have been crossed in the name of science? And what don't we know about the experiments happening behind closed doors today? This wasn't just a one-off experiment. It's part of a larger story, one that forces us to ask, how far can we go before science crosses a line that we can't come back from? If you found this video as fascinating as I did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the strange and unsettling world of science, crime, and hidden history. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok for exclusive behind-the-scenes content, previews of upcoming episodes, and bite-sized versions of the wildest stories you've ever heard. Let's keep the conversation going across all platforms. Thank you so much for watching if you made it to the end, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Dark Files.
Well, there was criticism. There were people, very good scientific people that don't agree with, the direction I've gone. To me, speaking of our work in general, that really transgresses many important intellectual fields, not just transplant biology, but philosophy, theology, that if what we were doing was successful, it would be crossing new divisions that had never been crossed before.